Bias Policing and Mediation, second quarter 2016 report.
Can I take any comments out?
Good morning, Commissioners. Commander Stewart Mays, I'm commanding officer of Internal Affairs Group. Good morning. This is our second quarter of 2016 report. It's not a report with second quarter data. It's actually year-to-date data for 2016, comparing it, of course, to prior years.
You gotta hear it from me anyway.
Starting more or less at the beginning, when you look at the numbers of bias policing complaints so far this year and last year, you'll notice that 2015 and so far this year they look very much lower than previous years. 2015 has 211, and year-to-date 2016 97, which would project out to 194. But like what happens in 2014 and prior years, this data is based upon complaint intake data. So complaints identified as bias policing complaints at the time of intake. And as complaints are investigated and they go through the process and we learn that there are actually more bias policing complaints than we can identify at intake, because sometimes during the investigation of complaints where a bias policing allegation isn't made at the beginning, it may be made later on. So I expect numbers for 2015 and 2016 both to increase and more likely mirror those of 2014 and 2013 as it goes. Regarding the number of complaints broken down by bureau and by area, South Bureau continues to have a higher proportion of bias policing complaints than the percentage of residents, and Valley Bureau continues to have a lower proportion of complaints, of bias policing complaints, than the percentage of residents. But those numbers have been roughly similar to the 3-year average. When you look at complaints by area, Central and Pacific both have a higher percentage of complaints than the percentage of residents. In Central's case, it's lower than the 3-year average.
About the way they do their job, and about the police.
And those are
Thank
little
you.
anomalies when we look at those. Of course, when you look at Central and Pacific, they both have very large, daytime populations because of the downtown area, and of course Venice Beach, which is unique to the Pacific area. This quarter, 77th has a higher percentage, and actually a considerably higher percentage of complaints than the 3-year average. This quarter being 15.5, for this half of the year, while the 3-year average is 4.7. And correspondingly, Southwest has a considerably lower percentage than the 3-year average. But it is roughly similar to the population. So the 3-year average for Southwest being 11, and this year being 6.2 so far. So there's really, I have no explanation for that, but it kind of bears watching.
We know that.
If that holds true as the year progresses.
Well, I'll tell you.
It's also interesting that 2 areas had 0 complaints so far this year, that being Harbor and West LA. Now, both of those areas traditionally have very low numbers of bias policing complaints. 5.7 and 5.3 per year, respectively. But 0 for a half year is still stands out. So we're going to have to watch that and see if that holds true as the year progresses. Regarding accused employees by gender, ethnicity, age, and tenure, this year so far, actually females, the number of female accused officers has increased. And that's the first time that's happened. So it's gone up from 10% or almost 11%
Teach the guys
in 2015, and females are now accused employees on 16.5% of the complaints.
How does that compare to their percentage of
Still
apples in patrol or in metro or in gangs?
That we haven't broken down, so that I don't have an answer for you. But that's something we can look at and something that we can do for the next report.
All they're gonna do is look at it.
Females are still represented less than their representation on the department, or they're accused less than their representation, but that's a question that we'll look at for the next quarter. Yeah, please do. As far as accused employee assignments, and you may recall, we had a discussion in the last quarter where gang enforcement officers showed 0 complaints. Well, that's been made up for with the second quarter. So the first quarter appeared to be an anomaly, and now year to date, though, they're represented 8.7% of the complaints. And nothing else really stands out as far as that goes. The most accused are patrol officers, and then after patrol officers, you have metro traffic enforcement and gang enforcement, because they're also overrepresented, and that's not
They
really
have them
surprising.
walking and
Those
people
employees
have less
engaged in
crime.
certainly the highest number of discretionary enforcement activities, and we'd almost expect them to be the highest represented as far as being accused employees.
Now, we have far more officers in patrol than we do gang and
Do you want
metro,
us to
correct?
pose?
Yes, sir.
So, well, obviously, we would expect that number to be higher, but proportionally, is patrol higher than gangs and metro?
Higher than their representation. From the comparison group that we put together.
When I look at it, it seems to me that, that in proportion to the number of officers in those divisions, that the number of complaints for gang enforcement officers and officers in Metro were higher than patrol, which frankly doesn't surprise me given the nature of their assignments, and far more of their stops are observational in nature as opposed to a call for service.
Yeah, it took them
Wow.
5 hours
So
to show up when I got
I would
jumped.
hope that in terms of when we're rolling out our training, our anti-bias training,
Yes.
that, first of all, let's make sure I'm correct about that. If I'm not correct about that, then let's discuss. If I am correct about that, I would hope that those officers would be targeted for the training at a higher priority level than officers in patrol. And also, when you were going through the numbers earlier, it's obvious that the South Bureau, when you look at the proportion of officers to population, look at the proportion of complaints to population is far higher than every other bureau. So that should also be, that bureau should be prioritized for that training as well.
Understood, and we'll have to convey that to our training people. But I think
Start.
the fourth quarter report.
They were trained already.
We put that training on fair and impartial policing in almost every course that we teach. And it may be a little difficult to prioritize one bureau over another, or one area over another, or one type of assignment over another, unless there's specific training strictly on that topic. But that's something that we can convey to Police Sciences and Training Bureau.
Commissioner, if you're interested in this topic, which it appears you are, maybe we could have Dr. Pinnell come, and this is a little bit outside of Commander Maislin's primary assignment, so maybe we could have our Director of Training come and talk a little bit about how we make determinations on training and who gets it.
You know, the cops can't even climb the stairway.
Well, fortunately.
I'm sitting on the side of the building. I had to show them how to get up there, and then they tried and they fell and ripped their uniforms.
I do still think it's
Idiots.
important that the higher volume of complaints comes from patrol, and also sort of the classic traffic stop, and the perception that racial profiling occurs during those incidents. And as I've said this before, we've had this discussion before, that many complaints, I presume, that are based on implicit bias, which is difficult to corroborate, and it's difficult to gather evidence on those kinds of things. So as a result, I understand that in the end, most of these complaints might end up insufficient evidence resolved, or unresolved. So when I think about the issue, I think about the volume of complaints, the initiation of the complaints, and it's difficult to understand where we need to address the problem, or how we should address the roots of the problem without an analyst to help us, to distill the data.
Well, you can.
Because of the way implicit bias operates, it's difficult to know how to prevent complaints complaints in the future, but I think that's what, I think the volume of complaints needs to be, continue to be paid attention to.
And that's what we do, and that's
Yeah.
why we include this breakdown by accused employee assignments, and again, I mean, you're both correct. Clearly,
You
the
wanna
highest
see where the
volume of
problem
complaints
is, look
goes
in the
to
mirrors.
officers, and that's the highest number of officers, and followed by traffic, gang enforcement, and metro, because they engage in the kind of police work that, for the most part, generates these types of complaints. So,
You're the one that generates the complaints.
Commander Maslin, are you done with your report? Are we in the commission question comment portion of this meeting, or?
well, I have more I can provide, but I'm always certainly, it's your meeting, so.
No, I actually do want to hear the report. The commander and Chief McCarthy took extended me the courtesy of briefing me on the report a week or so ago, and so I have given a lot of thought about it and did have some comments, but I am interested in certainly the commander finishing his report, and and so I'll reserve my comment until then.
Okay, so as far as the type of law enforcement contact or encounter, that's been pretty consistent, but there's been one change for 2016, where previously it's always been traffic stops, traffic stops, and then pedestrian stops have been consistently the two most highest types of contact, law enforcement contact or encounter where these complaints have been made. With radio calls have been the third. Well, so far for this year, radio calls have actually jumped up and become the second behind traffic stops. So that's a little unusual. And as far as the discriminatory conduct alleged, that's been consistent throughout. If we're talking detention, arrest, and discourtesy being the three most common type of activity that folks are complaining about. And of course, as far as type of bias, ethnic bias far outweighs any other type of bias that's alleged. Ethnic representation of the complainants has also been consistent. Black males are far and away the most aggrieved parties, and they complain about the traffic and ped stops, and that the stop or arrest was based on ethnic bias. And while black complainants were the most numerous ethnic group, declined in 2016. So prior years, 2014, it was 65%,
Well, maybe
2015
people
down
would
to 60%, almost 61%.
treat them like the humans and
And
the
so
hell
far,
with the
year to
color.
date, 2016, it's almost 55%, so it's gone down about 5%. And
Bull.
Sounds like a
we'll have to see how that plays out for the rest of the year, but that is a little bit unusual. And of course, since 2014, black complainants have basically accused Hispanic or white employees.
Will you stop with the black and white? People are people. It doesn't matter what color they are.
Me,
Jesus.
ma'am, you've interrupted this meeting multiple times now. If you have a comment, please submit a card.
I did.
Go
You
ahead
guys
and
haven't
reserve
called
your
it yet.
comment for when you know
Oh,
when
you
to
know what? You
interrupt
guys
when you're
can kiss my
committed.
butt. That's all you know how to do. Now, you want to see what the trouble is? Go look in a damn mirror. Morons.
Matt, that's not fair. She did all that, and you're not going to tell her she has one more
She
warning?
is leaving.
Aww.
It's not the meeting.
So a white
But
woman does
she's
all
got
that,
the
and I get one
collection
warning.
and the protection.
We have
Let's
please.
continue. Go
She's
ahead.
got the collection and protection.
Okay, so moving on, as far as the adjudication,
Oh, please.
again, just as a reminder, the adjudication of the complaints are based upon closed complaint data. So some of the complaints that were closed during 2016 most likely include complaints from 2015, 2014, and possibly some even as far back as 2013. Unfounded complaints are down this year from 83.5, 3-year average, to 74.6. Mediated is up, which is a good sign. The more complaints we can mediate, the better. And that was 10.5% of the complaints. Insufficient evidence to adjudicate is not resolved or are up as well slightly from prior years. And guess the elephant in the room is the number of sustained complaints, and during 2016, there have been 0 sustained allegations of bias.
Once again,
I need to
0.
file a complaint.
There were 2 allegations that were sustained by the chief of police in 2013, and those show in the not guilty category. We added a new section. We did add a new section to the report this quarter on video, and it's actually on video and audio and how that's assisted in the adjudication of complaints. And 43 of the 121 closed complaints, there was actually, the adjudicator had access to video or audio which assisted or could have assisted in the adjudication. Actually, 8 of those were closed as mediated, so we don't have data on that, but of the 35 of the 43 that were adjudicated had video or audio, and 28 or 80% of the 35 video or audio actually assisted in the adjudication. 26, it assisted in the adjudication of some allegations, and on 2 of them, it actually disproved the entire complaint from the get-go. And all of those, both of those were digital in-car video, and of the 26 where it assisted, 20 were in-car video, 6 were other kinds of video. That included cell phone video, city council video, and or officers personally owned.
How come the videos are so private? How come they're not public? How come they're not transparent?
Stop disrupting the meeting.
What's a secret?
First warning.
Secret government.
If you continue to disrupt, I'm going to ask you to leave.
I think he
And as body-worn video, as we get back to installing body-worn video and instituting it throughout the department, I think we'll see more of that as well.
On the body-worn video, as it gets utilized, basically every officer. So every traffic stop, body-worn video will be used, and pedestrian stops as well.
Yes.
And so the history. My turn.
Sir, you've interrupted the meeting multiple times now. The white hat vanished. If you continue to disrupt, the next time I'm going to ask you to leave.
Is there a bias report for the meeting?
Real.
I'm actually a victim myself of it.
File complaints?
Yeah.
The history has been.
Again, you've also interrupted the meeting multiple times now. You interrupt again, I'm going to ask you to leave.
Let's use the video.
The history nationally and locally has been that the.
Shut up, Steve!
We have order, please.
Shut up, Steve! Shut up, Steve!
Fuck you, Steve!
What's right?
So the history has been that the incidents of complaints have gone down substantially. In some places, in some areas.
That's because the complaints don't do
My
anything.
turn, sir.
Okay,
You
sir,
excuse-
I gave you a warning earlier, sir. Now I'm asking you to leave.
You didn't give me
Yes,
any
I
warning.
did. Yes, I did.
No, you
Yes,
didn't.
I did, sir. Green hat, I'm asking you to leave.
Or
Please leave.
else.
Please, please. You use the word please like a fascist uses words.
So I'm going to go on now. That the numbers of complaints have dropped. I've seen up to 80%.
Secret government.
So I think that it's really important to
That's what the
continue
Nazis
to
were.
monitor these bias policing and mediation reports in relation to video, which is great. And as we roll out the body-worn video, I think my hope is that we're going to see really great results in this.
Thank you. So I have both some comments and actually a motion for the commission to consider. As I said, I very much appreciate the debriefing I had on the report, and also based on that briefing, understand that this kind of report has been presented to the commission in some form or fashion for some time now. And that the number of sustained complaints, particularly with respect to racial bias, has been at or near zero.
Because how?
The history of this kind of record keeping. It kind of may have gotten lost in the context of your report, but I do want to underscore my appreciation for the mediation program that's been established, and to indicate that at least I'm convinced that we should continue with that, and I sincerely hope that it grows in terms of participation. And also, to Steve's point, I certainly agree that we need to continue with this kind of report and tracking the nature of complaints, demographics, etc. That said, I certainly shared with you at the time and want to reiterate my concern that without a basis for comparison and some additional information, I think we continue to find ourselves at a place where there is a great deal of frustration and mistrust. Community members aren't convinced that we take bias seriously.
Y'all don't.
And I don't really believe that anyone sitting in this room believes that our data captures the full extent of inappropriate or biased encounters. I want to say that I am not suggesting that I have a perspective on what that number is, just that we're not hitting the mark with the metrics that we're currently collecting. With that said, and in an effort to find a path forward, I think some additional information would be helpful for me, for the public, the department, and I anticipate for the commission itself.
Yeah.
Therefore, I'd like to submit the following motion for consideration by my colleagues, and I'm going to read it to make sure that I capture it all.
Would you have an item to comment first before the motion?
So then I will
Well,
refrain.
her motion is different than the motion on the report, so.
We can hold the motion and
Let us comment
say
on the motion.
She read the
Let us hear the
motion.
motion.
Just hold the vote. So while you read the motion, I will.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I was going to say, as a general matter, I appreciate public comment and think that it's an important part of the feedback loop for decision making. So thank you for that.
Only one.
First, I would like a report from the department for the years 2011 through 2015, which contains the following information from departments I'll mention in a moment, and also the LAPD. The definition of bias policing or racial profiling of that agency, the number of complaints, and of those complaints, the number that were sustained, not resolved or unfounded, the demographics of the city's population, and the number of officers with that department. And the comparison departments would be Philadelphia, New York, Chicago, Dallas, and Baltimore. I think this will provide us with some data to ascertain how we compare to other departments. Second, I'd like to understand how the recruitment process how through the recruitment process we're attempting to identify any bias that a candidate may have. Third, in conjunction with this report, I'm requesting a presentation on what our recruit officers are instructed on in the police academy relative to anti-bias, bias policing, and implicit bias. I would like to also have included in that presentation the number of hours for this type of training. Fourth, and this is related to implicit bias training. It's my understanding that the department has received training in, quote, train the trainer for implicit bias. I'd like the status of rolling out that training and the number of officers who've been trained to date. What the strategy is to provide the training and when all of the department's sworn personnel will be trained. I'm also requesting that when the information that I've requested comes back to this commission, that it's presented all at one time and be agendized in such a way that we can have a robust discussion on the topic and that it be the only item on our agenda. My goal here is to get us beyond the limitations, which seems obvious, of relying on a single metric, that is to say, just the numbers captured in your report. I want to ensure that the public and officers, that as a department, we're selecting the best people to be police officers, providing the best training to our recruits and police officers throughout their careers, and that our supervisors and managers are doing all they can to provide leadership to ensure that bias doesn't occur. Since this matter is of both importance and keen interest, I'm requesting that these reports be scheduled for our commission meeting of November 1st. And would like to request that the executive director investigate the potential of holding this meeting in an environment or in a public space room that will accommodate better the members of the public that are interested in this topic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Finally, just as an aside, I do want to say this. The subject or topic of bias is incredibly important throughout our society, both as it relates to how people of color are treated, but in order to have that conversation in a meaningful way, we all have to be sensitive to not reflecting the very behavior that we want to stand against. And while I take the matter incredibly seriously and very much want and intend, with the support of the commission, to promote a real and meaningful dialogue that can serve as the basis for real and meaningful policy making, I do not, under any circumstances, want to support, signify, or to have anyone believe that I would co-sign that the members of this department writ large are inherently biased or show up to work for any reason other than to do the very best job they can protecting this city. We all have issues, and we've got to be prepared to work on them together and prepared to engage them in a respectful manner that reflects our willingness to self-correct, even as we ask others to correct. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not going to vote on this motion now, but there's actually another piece of information I would like to add. When you're looking at those other cities, I'd like to do a comparison to their complaint receiving and adjudicating processes. I know, obviously, we have a pretty robust system here that resulted out of the consent decree. I'm not sure that I'd be curious to see if there's anything to learn from any of these other departments, or if what they're doing differently in comparison to us.
Commissioner, if I could add, I think that the list of cities is good, and we will certainly look at all those cities. I don't know that all of them have a biased policing complaint intake process, so if we could also indulge the commission, we'll try to find some cities that do, and we'll include them in addition, not instead of.
Great. So November 1st is the day you requested. Is 6 weeks a reasonable period of time for you to get this amount of information from all of these participating cities?
From the other cities, well, that depends on them, I guess. We will do our best and give you an update. We'll go through Mr. T-Bank and provide an update on where we stand.
Let's do everything we can to have this on this.
And of course, then there are,
Well, you know?
there are other entities.
We can get that done today. Why wait 6 weeks?
Google is free. Google. You know Google's got every access to all of it.
There are other entities involved in providing some of the information. We're talking recruitment. I mean, we obviously are involved with recruitment along with the personnel department and the selection process. You know, there are personnel department people that we're going to have to get and provide all of that background as well. So it's not just an internal affairs report. It's way beyond us.
No, I appreciate that it will require more than just the department information. I understand that the department can pull it together.
Well, hopefully we can get the personnel department to participate in the presentation as well.
Yes. Want to call the, how many speakers do we have?
We have 10 comment cards. The first 5, Prentice Jenkins, Jamie Garcia, Angela James, Michael Novick, and Hamid Khan.
Prentice Jenkins,